Good day, everyone. Welcome back to Masulumane Foundation Twilight Series. My name is Masulumane Sandawana. Thank you for joining us. And today, we're giving you an epilogue of what we've been talking about on our previous topic and bringing my own daughter, Nomhle, unfiltered childhood. Now, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Nomhle Sandawana and I am the director of Masulumane Foundation. I'm also an international student studying in London and I am a founder and executive director of Trinity Wellbeing.
Now Nomhle, I call her a little girl. She will always be my little, I call her Nana. So if I say Nana, I'm still referring to her. Tell us about your childhood.
My childhood was a very exciting childhood. I look back and I think I was actually privileged to have the childhood that I have because I was born in such a loving household and, my voice has always been heard at home. I've always been visible. I've been that child who expresses her opinions, expresses her laughter, and it's always been a loving and warm home, and I'm so grateful for that. But also looking back, I've always been a child who I regard myself as different from some of my peers because of the interests that I had as a child. I remember some of the toys that I had as a child was business toys, selling and marketing. I was not a typical girl who had dolls or anything like that. So I've always been business driven, and that's the type of child that I was. And I think looking back, even in my high school years, I've been very distinct from some of my peers and my friends. And yes, that is my childhood. It's been very different, but also very captivating.
Yeah, now from where you're coming from, as you say, the warmth, the love, your voice being heard, not being cut off of your thoughts and not being cut off of your feelings, and one of them was to cheer a lot, when you express yourself and you cry a lot.
Oh yes.
And Nomhle tears up, and those were emotions that she was not shy to share with us as a family. And however, surely something either good or bad during that space of time, whether it's school or home or within the family itself, happened, and you find yourself in a space where either your heart is broken or that which you've built in you becomes something that looks two-way now, what you believed in or what you thought, and all of a sudden you find trying to put it as in together, and you find it's a broken piece of your life and you're struggling to put that together. If I were to ask you, what broken pieces did you pick up as a child?
I think that's a good question because although I was saying that my childhood has been very exciting and I was a privileged child, but with that, I mentioned in the previous question that I was a child that's very distinct or different from my peers, and with that came a lot of, rejection, and I guess a lot of loneliness. Like, I'm this different person. I feel alone. Why am I so, I don't do the certain things that some of my friends do. So I think having that loneliness and that rejection really contributed to the broken pieces that I had as a child. I'd say those are the main two elements, rejection and feeling lonely.
Wow. It's quite interesting to know as a mother that that was one of your struggles, to say you have to be something else at home, and immediately when you leave home you have to become something that you don't know so that you can be accepted in that space. And surely that has been a burden you carry, because you were at school for many years, for that matter. And if you were to tell us that experience that you had to face daily, how did it affect you? How did it end up being something that becomes a burden to you, and broken as you try to fit in yourself from school to home or from home to school? Those broken pieces, how did you learn to pick that up?
As I was saying, having felt rejection and feeling lonely, can bring elements of, even though you're around people, you still feel lonely. And I think that's what I've experienced. Those were the broken pieces that I experienced. Even at home as well, because I feel like if I had to put on that character at school, it also contributed to how I was at home. So even though I was expressing myself and laughing and showing my emotions, but inside I was still alone. And I think picking up those broken pieces and realizing that those are the areas that were broken inside me, that's when I started realizing that it is an issue. I cannot keep on expressing myself the way I do, but feeling empty and alone inside. Yeah.
It's quite interesting as a mother to know, surely, because we think once we are accepted from within that safe space, it means our life is okay. But it shows that we need the community, we need families, we need neighbors. We cannot only be accepted in one place. We continue to seek that embracing to the world at large, and which takes me back to, when God sent the Son, His only Son. He did not send for a certain group and a certain space. He said for all of them.
Yeah.
All of them, they're my children. And I strongly believe that's the feeling you had to say, everywhere you are, everyone should be giving the same that you know, but yet you find yourself experiencing something that you don't know outside of home. And that wounded you as a child.
Oh yes, it did. It did. And looking back, but it wounded me, but it also crafted me to who I am today. Yeah. I always like to say that, because I think the broken pieces that we experience are obviously meant to make us better people, make us a better person. And as I mentioned, being an international student, I moved to a different country by myself. So for me to be able to sustain myself in a different country, even though having experienced those alone feelings or lonely feelings, really, I look back and say, actually, I needed that time that I felt alone, and I needed it to craft me to be who I am as an international student.
Well said. Once more, I would say the pit, the prison, and the separation is a preparation for the palace. That's your palace now, yet it was a pit and it was a prison. Now, tell us, how did you embrace your shadows? Because that which became a burden, yet you find a way to maneuver it. How did you embrace that shadow? Because I'm calling it a shadow because it's a burden. It's not something that one or human should be carrying. But however, life finds or teaches us or takes us into that place. Now that you were taken into that place, how did you embrace it? How did you turn it into something?
I think I needed God to be able to deal with those emotions of rejection and loneliness, especially being an international student and going to study abroad by myself. I believe embracing my shadow enabled me to prepare myself emotionally that these are the things that I'm dealing with, and these are the things that I need to actually accept and allow God to use those things to teach me. how to be strong in a different country. And yeah, it's been God. It's really been God to embrace those shadows, prayer, and really being vulnerable to God and just expressing how I'm feeling. I think that made me aware of what I'm feeling, because I look back in my childhood, I wouldn't have articulated it as rejection or loneliness, but for me to realize that it was actually a problem and for me to be vulnerable with God, I think that's how I embraced those feelings.
Wow. Now, as a mother, we always either strive or try to bring the best that a mother or a father can bring to our children. And surely, as much as we did our part at home, there was a gap, that mom and dad couldn't fill. And it ended up wounded the very same child that we thought she was surrounded by the best that a family should give. And now, however, the dynamics of life coming from all angles, entered even into our own space as parents. And as a mom, there were questions and there were days that I could see that the bubbly child, the smiling child, the laughing, the free child slowly deteriorates, and as a mother, I would watch these different persona coming in, yet you don't know where it's coming from. So that's what I pick up from her story, as it is unfiltered and it is not cut. It is to say, as a mother as well, we had to play a role where we see these emotions and we see this behavior that is different. However, then, let's say now, this beautiful childhood that you had, as you shared with us, and you look back at that child that went through different stages of life's dynamics, what would you say to that child today?
Looking back, I would say to the child that I needed you. To become the person that I am today, I needed the Nomhle that was broken, that was rejected, that was lonely. I honestly believe it was preparation more than anything. It prepared me so much that I realized that, sometimes the things that we go through make us a better person, as I mentioned before. And the person that I am today, I wouldn't have been the person that I am today without that little girl and that little childhood that I had. So I'm very grateful to that child. I'm very grateful to that girl who was, even though in the pit, as you mentioned, but God sustained me. And I think that's just beautiful. Yeah, I needed that little girl because I am now who I am because of her.
Wow. Thank you, Nomhle, for sharing your story. Such an amazing story indeed. And surely this is an eye-opener to even us as mothers, that whatever that we do at home, it is never enough, because our children are not only confined in those spaces. They've got the world to meet, they've got other people to meet. So there is interference that comes from outside to within. But our role as parents, it is to identify, to encourage, and to help our children come out of the pit and come out of the prison and go to the palace that they are meant to be. Now join us once again on our next session on Twilight Series with Masulmane Foundation. Thank you for watching.